Wise Words presents Wendy Knight. Growing up as the only black child in a small Yorkshire town, Wendy Knight's childhood was a tapestry of contrast, freedom and friction, belonging and difference. From the streets of Brighouse to the heart of Huddersfield's diverse community, her story is one of resilience, identity, and the quiet power of carving out her own space in a world that doesn't always make room. A daughter of Guyanese and Bajan parents, Wendy's roots stretched across oceans, yet her journey is deeply Yorkshire. Wendy remembers the sting of racism at her doorstep, the shouts, the slurs, but also the sanctuary of home, the smell of her mother's okra stew, the strict love that shaped her, and the front room ornaments that whispered of a homeland she'd never seen. But this isn't just a story of survival. It's about finding your voice and your people. From navigating local authority corridors to standing in Downing Street, Wendy's tenacity turned barriers into stepping stones. And in Huddersfield's melting pot, she discovered something unexpected, a place where her fractured sense of identity could finally begin to heal. It's not where you start, it's where you finish. Wendy's story brings aspiration and motivation to the present and future generations.
I was born in Halifax. And I think my earliest memories of childhood would be playing out. I lived in Brighouse and I used to play out quite a lot with my friends. Yeah, I was the only black child amongst my peers, really, because Brighouse is quite a white populated town. But no, I had fun. I don't think our parents really knew where we went to. You know, nowadays children are in the home playing Xbox and everything else. We used to be out all over the place, in the park, swinging off everything that we shouldn't be swinging off, and nearly killing ourselves, and then coming home when it got dark. So I had a good childhood, really. Well, as soon as we arrived, we experienced discrimination because we got a house on like a terrace block, and I can remember one of the residents hanging out of the window saying that sort of the black people are coming, and were quite racist, really, initially, but that soon subsided, really. I remember childhood, for us as a black family, we didn't have a lot of toys and stuff like that. Playing wasn't my mum's top priority. Food possibly was, but not playing and education. Whereas some of the other children along the terrace block, that playing and learning was quite a priority. So I used to play with their toys and they used to come and eat at our house. And we used to just really blend it, really. And it was a really good experience because, you know, learning. Our parents wanted us to learn, but I think food was quite, and making sure that we were nourished was a staple for our family. And it wasn't for some of the others. Some of the other children on the street would go hungry, but they'd have the best toys. When we were moving into the house in Brighouse, I can remember carrying like a box up the path, and a young man in the next door hung out of the window and said, "Oh, the niggers are coming." And I not really heard anything like that before, and I just didn't really know what to expect. But that sort of was the first experience of probably racism that I experienced, but probably didn't know just what it meant. So in terms of in the home, you know, I even talk about that we grew up in a joyous household. You know, it was a really nice place. My childhood was good. It was nice to be in the house because it was like you were cocooned from anything that was going on outside. So you might be a black family in a white community, but when you were in the house, you felt a strong identity was in there. You know, my mum would be there with her apron. You know, cooking with the thing. You don't eat Pond Street. You don't have takeaway. You don't eat food from people, right? You eat here, and food was the order of the day. You know, if you know, you'd almost be followed around the house. Have you eaten? I'm cooking, and usually it would be rice, balanje, ladyfingers, okra, stuff like that. And my mum could cook up some stuff, you know, and she'd have. It was almost like, you know, Jesus with the fishes. She'd have like a couple of pieces of okra and something else. Before you know it, it's a casserole. yeah. So she used to be amazing with food, and she used to be, and it might be because we were poor. You know, she would say that you don't. So restaurants weren't places that we went to, and I can remember my sister. You know, my sister's got 3 children, and they've been my life really. So she sort of inherited what my mum says. We don't go to a restaurant. We eat from home. So my sister has her apron on cooking too, and cooking the balanje and the okra and stuff. So when I took my niece and nephews to a restaurant, they don't know what to do. And that was really telling. They didn't know which pieces of cutlery to use, because it's something that we didn't do. And actually, to function in this society, you have to do these. I mean, they go everywhere now. They go to every restaurant, go in and eat out. So that kind of culture, or that kind of value has been lost a bit. You know, that cooking at home, cooking West Indian foods. I tend to go to Charmaine's. We do cook West Indian food, but it's not an everyday thing. It seems to have been lost. It was every day my mum would cook West Indian food. And there was this thing about you can't get down from the table until you've yammed out all the food, because it might have been about poverty, that that she needed to make sure that we were full and that we had eaten well. But food was a real important part of our life. Oh, discipline. My mum's a matriarch, so I grew up without a father. So discipline was the order of the day, really. My mum used to discipline us, beat for jokes. But I was quite a tenacious child, really. And the mum even said, I'm one of 5, and I'm the youngest. And she said I was the most tenacious one. So for example, there are 3 boys and 2 girls, so I've got a sister, and she would listen to what my mum said. But me, for example, mum said you can't go on the school trip. And I thought, all right. All right. So I'd come back to her time and time, and you'd see me on the school trip, So I was quite a tenacious child, but my mum's discipline was next level. So, when I came in late or anything, I used to try and bring a white friend home, one of my friends home, so that it would be levelled out. So she might think I'm not going to box her down. But she still did. I can remember one of my friends came to the door with me as I went in, and my mum met me with a frying pan. And my friend said, "See ya!" and left. So discipline was really bad. I didn't, my mum put me in the Salvation Army when I was 8, and I stayed there for 10 years. So religion and things, she probably thought that might be able to straighten her out. Because I wasn't really a really bad child, I don't think. It was just that she wanted, she thought this one needs some structure. So I was always like in school, I didn't get into trouble. I can remember getting into trouble once but it was a classroom. The whole class got into trouble. Mum said, I'm going to see you at school. And I knew what that meant. I'd get boxed out in front of everybody. So my mum was really a disciplinarian, really. Well, my parents, my mum is from Guyana, and my father is from Barbados. So I remember my mum had a passion for the front room. You know, if you went in there, you had to sit very sort of straight, like don't touch anything and don't say anything much, because people would have been round. So it's a room where my mum would see her friends or a guest. It wasn't a room where we were allowed to go, you know. And I can remember that she'd brought things from London, because my parents came to London first, then came up to West Yorkshire. And I was born in West Yorkshire. And they'd have, like, from the 70s, those glass fish. They'd have the black doll that's got, like, a big dress on, like, I think it used to cover toilet rolls and stuff like that. They'd have, these net things everywhere, doilies and things like that. My mum was, and she had lots of ornaments. She was very particular about her ornaments. And I can remember being in there with people, guests, and you'd be briefed before they arrived about that you must be seen and not heard. And when you was heard, because you might get carried away and start to join in the conversation, you would get a look. And that look was, you remember what I told you in the briefing. So, but then sometimes with my tenacious self, I just pass that and get the licks later. But yeah, the front room was a very special place, really. I think it brought out some of my mum's character, really, and the things that she liked, and a lot of there were a few things from back home. They'd have the Guyanese flag and things like that. So yeah. Okay, my mum talked about coming to England in the 60s. Her sister had already come shortly before her with her husband, so she came directly to her sister in London. She was looking for work, really. My mum came to look for work. She was a bit confused about these trains and stuff, the tube, and she just saw it as being very busy. So I can remember people talking about the no dogs and no blacks, and I don't think my mum experienced that because she came to her sister who had probably experienced that before. But, you know, my mum talks about a time, because she already had children, she had to leave two of the two boys at home in Guyana. And she came here, and then she had my sister. And it was a working experience. She had to go to work, and the childcare was done between them, so my aunt would look after my sister whilst my mum went to work. And I think, looking back, my sister talks about my aunt with greater affection, probably, than my mum, because my aunt looked after my sister the majority of the time. And my mum talks about possibly a hard time, you know, having to run for the tube and all that in this cold, frosty place, and nobody talking to you or whatever, don't want to sit next to you, or, you know. She talks about a time that you can relate to it somehow, but it seems the racism seems to be more overt in that time. I think racism still exists, but I think it's much more under the carpet and a bit indirect, really. I don't think things have moved on as much as we think. But back in that day, my mum describes it in England where, you know, you would have signs up saying that, you know, welcome. You know, it was very clear that it wasn't a place really for them. I think she was very homesick. seemed like in London they'd formed a Guyanese little community, and her cousin was there, and he moved up to Huddersfield, and then my mum moved from London to Huddersfield to be with her. She seems to have followed people around. She doesn't seem to be the forefronter. She seems to follow the family around. So she came up to Huddersfield, and because he came up and he said, "I got a big house up here, you know." So it seems like housing down in London was much smaller, a bit more cramped. Maybe people living in rooms, more than one family living in a room. Whereas when you came up to Yorkshire, people were reporting like it was a palace. You had lots of space and that. Come up to Yorkshire and get a house. So she came to Huddersfield, and then they gave her a house in Brighouse, and that's how she came. By then she had 2 children, so she had my sister and another boy, my brother, and then I was born in Brighouse, Halifax, yeah. I think my mum was quite religious herself, because she would have a picture of Jesus, but they also had pictures of dogs, and they didn't like dogs really. But I thought it was very strange. But she would always have a picture of Jesus, and the cross was very prominent in the house. Don't know. Maybe she thought that might save us. Yeah, when I went to school, I was the only black child in the year. My siblings, if I was lucky, were going out of the school. They would be in year 6 or whatever. So I might have them for 1 year. And because there's 5 of us, I think it was deemed as a big family at that time, although some other families had 8 and stuff like that. But, you know, she's a knight, you know, so, you know. But apart from that, there wasn't much anything that I remember about like cultural identity or empowering you as to understand your roots or anything like that. No, not really. On reflection, I don't think that I was good at school in terms of academically good. I don't think I found my niche or anything. I like sport a lot, but my mum didn't give much weight to sport really, you know, as if that wasn't going to get you a job. So I don't think I did well. I didn't do well at school. I got 100% attendance certificate, and that was about it. But I didn't do academically well at school. In terms of the content, the curriculum at school, I don't remember it really. There wasn't any subject that I would have said that stuck with me, or apart from sport. I used to even go running on a dinner time with one of the teachers. She did something like sewing and stuff, but she used to run on a dinner time, so I'd go and run with her. But apart from those, and I excelled in sport. But in anything else, no, not really. But I wasn't a child that caused trouble either. So I just stayed under the radar. But I knew as a black child, I was more susceptible to bullying. So I had to make sure that I handled myself. My mum would sort of give you lessons at home about how to dump the pitney down. You know, to make sure that you looked after yourself, because she couldn't be there to look after you. So one of the things that she recognised is that we had to be physically strong or able to defend herself, and that. So although I was the Salvation Army girl, you didn't want to mess with me. So school were about thumping down and things like that. It wasn't really about academia for me.
Just like this river.
I don't actually remember a lot of people saying anything about my colour to me. They may have done behind my back, but I don't recall many people saying about my colour to me. If I got into any scrapes, it would just be because I was just under the cock of the school in terms of ability to fight. So I didn't really get much opposition. So I never really heard much racism, and I used to chill with the good girls. I was in a group of those that didn't go behind the bike shed smoking or anything. I think one of my friends was a Jehovah's Witness, and my other friends I don't think had religion, and I were a Salvation Army girl. So we used to stay together like that. There was only one time that I got into a fight with a lad because girls didn't fight me. And so I can remember getting into a fight with a lad, and he called me something to do with my race, which helped me to fight a bit more. But I really didn't get into much trouble really at school about it, and I don't remember direct racism, but I understood that it was always indirect. There was always that undertone that actually, you know, you're less than. I'm not sure how it made me feel at school. I can't remember how it made me feel at school. But once I got into the workplace, it made me very determined to level out this uneven playing field. And I've always been one for the underdog. It doesn't matter, regardless of race, sex, gender, or anything like that. I've always seemed to gravitate to people who are less fortunate or struggling.
I know a change is gonna come.
My mum and I went to Salvation Army on a Sunday, and she put me in there all day, and she'd come on an evening. We really enjoyed it, you know. And my mum was very meticulous about how we appeared. We didn't have a lot of money, but we always had to be well turned out. And she was a stickler for you being well turned out. I can remember going. My mum would take us to the fair once a year, and I can remember going to the fair in a purple dress, which had like a cream like pinafore thing here. Yeah, and then why I remember it so with matching shoes, purple shoes, and it's the fair, you know. You know, and why I remember it so much is that I went in, because I would go on the boys' things. So I'm on the dodgems, yeah, and in this pretty dress, and I was hanging out of the dodgem car, and I got hit by another dodgem in my mouth. So the blood was. I can only remember the pretty dress because the blood was dripping down onto my dress, and I think my mum might have been more concerned about the dress. You know, what I'm trying to say is she used to make sure that we were well turned out, and she found religion and the church like a bit of maybe somewhat like an island, like somewhere where you can cast your cares on there. So, you know, even though she were working hard and that, I think she got some respite by going to the church and stuff like that. And I think there's a sense of community in the church. So I think she wanted to make sure, especially for the girls, me and my sister had to go. The boys seemed to not have to go anywhere. So sometimes, you know, I might have wanted to be male. I think my brothers will have had to sort of, because I didn't have a father, they may have stepped up to have that sort of father role. So I think they would have been like very supportive to my mum, possibly having to go to work straight away. One of my brothers, he was called Pelly, but his name was Brian. But because he was so good at football, he was nicknamed Pelly. And he seemed to leave that behind because he went to work, and I'm sure it was because my mum wouldn't have had the money. So I think he left his passion to help mum to bring us up. So I think they did have pressures in a different way than we did. I think I'm very confused really about what my identity is, because I think when I go back, like my partner's Jamaican, so when I go back to Jamaica, there seems to be a strong identity there for black people. Something that I gravitate towards, because I like that. I like that sort of, that they seem to be knowing who they are and they're proud of their Jamaican heritage, and they seem to behave in particular certain ways, which when I go there, you can tell that I'm not from there, but I'm not from here either, because I don't really know what my identity is, because I think it's been sort of stripped out. So, because I've got a bit of like white sort of business-like personality. Then I've got a bit of, I can't even explain it. It sounds a bit strange to say, like street sort of. I don't really know what my identity is. It's a bit sad to say, really. I'm not sure if any of us do though, because my best friend is Kulbia, and she's a Sikh. She sort of says the same thing. She sort of says when she goes to India, she doesn't feel like she fits in there either. When she's here, she doesn't fit in. So I think in terms of identity, I'm in a bit of a no man's land, but I don't think I'm the only one. I think there's maybe a boat full of us. I lived at home till I was 30. So I lived in Brighouse till I was 30 years old. When I finished college, I did a nursery nursing course. You know, when I finished school with no qualifications apart from this certificate for 100% attendance, they said, "Oh, you can go and do childcare." No, because childcare wasn't, anybody could do it, which is a real concern, because children are our next generation and they want to put anybody next to children. You know, you should have your best practitioners next to children, in my view. Anyway, I wanted to work with children all my life, and it might be because I was the youngest child. I had no siblings. I had to dress up my dolls and things like that. So I really wanted to work with children. It was my passion. And I'm so glad that I followed my passion from school. So I went to work in a nursery, and I soon started to work for the local authority in childcare services. And I've worked for local authority for about 23, 24 years. Came in on a junior level, and along my career, I'm in Downing Street with the Prime Minister doing policy on children's services. And I'm like Wendy from the ghetto. I'm here, and I just think that anything's possible, really, you know, so. I must have felt like it wasn't a level playing field, that it wasn't equal, because I used to say to my friend, which I told you about, Kulbia, Bura, my bestie. We met at work 14 years ago, and we'd have our desks would be near to each other, but I used to have a little sign on mine which meant I take no shit. Yeah, and she were a bit more softer, so when we went out together, we balanced each other out, so we were the good cop, bad cop sort of thing. So I think I've recognised that actually people like me, women like me, don't really feature in senior management a lot. And I thought, how am I going to get through this? And I think I went back to childhood, which is about being sort of the cock of the school. And on reflection now, I don't think that was the best way, but that's what I did to get through. And actually, I was very drilled on my passion, on my job, so I knew it inside out and very well. And I felt like I had to, as a black woman. I couldn't just turn up. I had to really understand my craft, or, you know. Well, I think it might, that having to prove yourself might go back to identity. And it might be about that you don't know where you are, really. So you're carving out something that's not really real, you know, and then you just think, well, this is going to be my identity, and I'm going to stick at this and see what happens. And actually, I've found that it doesn't always go down well, being too tenacious and strong. it didn't always go down well. You might get. I can remember one of the directors saying to me along my career, fight the battles that you need to fight. I didn't know what he was on about because I fought anything sort of thing. And then I, over my career, and especially to the end of working for the council, started to understand what he meant. That everything's not a fight, and there are people on your side. You don't have to feel like you're on your own. And I thought it was quite insightful, but then I've learned that he was married to a black woman, so he probably understood my behaviours. So I probably got shielded a bit from some of the pressures because he understood.
No attitude, you just be yourself. Could live with you
the local authorities talk up equality and diversity, and they seem to have it on paper, but in practice, they in my view, they don't have it. I think they have it difficult as well, because when I was managing and trying to recruit people, people of colour weren't coming for the post, and I'm not sure why that was. Did that stem back to that they didn't have the qualifications, or I'm not sure, but I didn't interview a lot of people of colour for posts, which actually you can't change the landscape if people don't come forward. So by 2000, my mum had gone back to work, and she was working in the car factory, and something that's not an issue in the West Indies is time. But when you come to work in England, time is a very important factor. You'll be back home, and even when I go to Jamaica, it's about soon come. What does soon come mean? It could be 2 hour, 3 hour, yeah. But you try soon come in England about I'm coming to work. Time was is very important in English culture. And some of my mum's colleagues would get into trouble at work around time, and rightly so in this culture. But they had this sort of attitude that that time doesn't matter so much because it's part of our culture. And I think it is in a lot of black people, time isn't sort of the centre of their universe. So they'd get a lot of discrimination, really, in terms of talking about how their timekeeping isn't good. Then it would lead on to their work practices weren't good. Yeah. Whereas had they maybe paid more attention to time, then they might have been deemed differently in the workplace. I came to Huddersfield in November 2008. I was I'd left home at 30, so I got a house in Bradford, and then I decided, I won't mind another. So I got an apartment in Steeton, so I was living out with the cows and the sheep then, and no black people. And I was just I lived in a professional block, and you just run into work and things like that. But every time on a Saturday when I went walking, people would be like almost having a crash, as if to say, black people in Steeton, what's going on? And so it was very much a bit like Brighouse. And then I met my partner on the 14th of November 2008, sketched in my brain, because he lives in Huddersfield. So I came to Huddersfield and I never left, I met him the first day. I didn't leave because actually Huddersfield is so diverse for me. Yeah, something that I never experienced before. Do you know this thing about identity and not knowing where you belong? I felt like I belonged when I arrived in Huddersfield. I live on De Lacy Avenue, and it's very diverse. There are black and white people, Asian people. It's just like something I never have experienced before. And I feel in the last 10 years, I've found myself by being in Huddersfield and by being around black people, really. So I really love Huddersfield. If you threw me out of the house, I think I'd find a house in Huddersfield still, because I love us. I love Huddersfield. I still feel like I've got a long way to go. I don't think I'm completely whole yet and found my total identity. But I feel like it's coming in Huddersfield because, you know, like my sister, she came and lived in Huddersfield a long time before me, so maybe she's been here 30 years. So sometimes I'm walking around the town with my sister and things, and I've met people because of her. I now know quite a lot of families in Huddersfield. Some of the Cunninghams are my friends, the Faces are my friends. So I've got to know a lot of people in Huddersfield. I think knowing other black women and other black people, recognising that what I felt, even in Brighouse and Steeton and elsewhere, people still feel that way in Huddersfield. I think there's still that sort of sense of I don't know where I belong. Yeah, but at the same time, there is a little more sense of community here, because I didn't have that in Brighouse. Even when I lived in Bradford, I didn't have that sense of community. It was almost like keeping up with the Joneses life I had, where everyone used to come out and do their garden at the same time, wash their cars, but they didn't talk to each other, they just went in their house. I don't feel like that in Huddersfield. It's really, I get to know my neighbours, and I try to get involved in the community and projects that are going on in the community, and actually really understand what the journey is like for other people. I think the biggest display of community, unfortunately, for Huddersfield is the carnival. That's the only time when you really get a sense of everybody coming out and coming together. But that's only once a year, you know. I did go to Ilkley Carnival, for example. It was a totally different kind of feeling, yeah. So the carnival and things like that in Huddersfield bring people together a lot. And then I'm not sure of any mass like gatherings or anything in Huddersfield that identify like the black community. I think there needs to be a bit more for the black community, and not just to have a carnival where we're jumping up and down. I think something more serious, something more like, I'm not sure what happens, and I think I'll pay more attention for Black History Month this month about what happens in Huddersfield. But I don't feel like the black community is taken seriously enough in Huddersfield, considering that there is such a community. I could understand it in Brighouse because there aren't that many black people. But in a town where you've got such a percentage of black people, I don't see it reflected in the services. Well, I've worked in local authority a long time, and I think some of the direction needs to come from the local authority about how they really embrace diversity and how that's displayed through the town. So, for example, I love the statue of, is it Harold Wilson and all that, but I may not see nothing about no black people anywhere in Huddersfield. So it's about the Windrush in the years after. How has that legacy come to Huddersfield? How are we portraying that in Huddersfield? I can't see a single icon that, because black people will have done a lot in this town. You know, it had quite a lot of, was it cotton and manufacturing and things like that. So I'm sure that a lot of black people would have come and worked here and helped to build this town. Yet I've not seen any icon to any black person in Huddersfield. And since there's such a lot of us, you would have thought that there would have been, and that there would be more of an emphasis in the town on what contribution we've made. I think for young people, what I would say to a young person is to sort of step back. I think it's sort of a roller coaster is life, and we get pushed along to do things that we don't want to do. So you might end up making choices that, in hindsight, you think, I wish I'd done this career. So perhaps talking to your parents and helping and slowing the process down. So maybe giving yourself breathing space. One of the things that I've learned is if I'd learned to give myself breathing space in a lot of the decisions I've made in life, I probably would have made better decisions. So my sort of guide to young people or whatever is to give yourself breathing space to think through your decisions before you act, because they can live with you for the whole of your life. So to take a year out of education and do something else might be the best thing for you. To take time, and go somewhere else in the world or in the country so that you can think about what you want to do, where you fit in, think about your identity. It's really important to do, and what is half a year or a year in terms of a lifetime. But it might be the best thing that you do by taking a pause, by taking time out to think about what you're doing. And I think the key is about thinking about what you're doing and where you fit in and what you want out of life. Because actually, it's a blessing that we've all got life. We've got one life, and we need to use it well. Take time to think about what you got to do next. The thing that I remember about my mum and some of the sayings that she would say, especially to me, is if you can't hear, you must feel. And I used to feel a lot. She'd have to tell me a lot, but I wouldn't sort of listen. So that was one of the things that she would say, is that if you can't hear, you must feel.